Does anyone else have the problem of reading too many ongoing series, or is it just me? I swear, I try to be good. I try to finish series that I start. I love endings. I love to see how a story comes to a close, but I can't seem to help myself. Something new comes out that looks interesting or exciting. I pick up book one, and before I know it, I'm halfway through one series, 2 books into another, 1 book into these 3 series. It's a whole mess. But the cool thing about ongoing series is you don't have to feel guilty about it because the author hasn't finished it yet, so it doesn't count really in the same way, right? Anyway, today we're going to be going over my top 10 fantasy series that are still ongoing. Welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. Today is a fun video because we're going to be looking at my top 10 series that are still ongoing. The author hasn't finished them yet, and while that can be frustrating, I know there's especially some particular authors who I'm not naming in this second at least, who have books that are long awaited, and it's really frustrating because we don't know when or even if we'll get a conclusion. But there is something really fun about being part of the zeitgeist of an ongoing series, about going to the bookstore on opening night or opening day, or just waiting till midnight when you can download the audiobook. However you do it, there's something about that moment of there's a new entry coming out in the series. I kind of miss the good old days when you would have like midnight lines at the bookstore. I guess that still happens for a few select series, but generally not as much the series that I'm obsessed with, although maybe 1 or 2 could get that treatment. I still love the excitement of a new release, of knowing that there's an upcoming volume. And I just know for some of my favorite series, when they are truly over, there will be that sadness, that emptiness of something being done. Sometimes the anticipation is better than the thing itself. All right, so real quick before we get into it, these are not necessarily my 10 favorite series of all time. They're just my favorite series that are currently ongoing that I'm also reading. So there are potentially series out there that I haven't started yet that if I did would replace something on that list, but I won't know because I haven't read it yet. And I'm also not at the same point in every single series. Like some of these I'm caught up on, and some of these I'm still like 1 or several volumes behind. I'll call out where I am in a series when I get to that series, but these are still the series that I'm most excited about, and like when we get a new entry, these are the ones that I'm going to be there day one. I'm going to be waiting at the door. And for a couple of these on this list, I would camp out overnight or for days potentially. And I think you could probably guess what those particular entries might be. I just realized I have 11 books in this stack, so I guess we're going to retcon that. It's actually, we'll call one an honorable mention. And finally, I will be ranking this list. Originally, I wasn't going to do that, but I decided I need to commit. I need to tell you what I am most excited about on this list. I'm excited about all of them. They're all in this top 10 list, but the ones at the end, those are the ones I'm really, really dying to have. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into the list. Book 11, my honorable mention, because I can't count apparently, is the Anna and Din Mystery series by Robert Jackson Bennett. Formerly, this series was called Shadow of the Leviathan, but I guess the publisher decided to call them Anna and Din Mysteries from now on, which makes some sense because these are kind of a Sherlock Holmes style mystery series, but set in a dark fantasy world with incredible world building. I just finished the second book. This is the third. I'll be reading it fairly soon, but I've read 2 out of the 3 that are available. And this has some of the coolest world building. There's these giant leviathans that come out of the ocean and wreck everything. And so this empire has erected these walls to protect everybody. And the blood of these leviathans can cause all sorts of mutations that can often be deadly or toxic, but also can augment people and make them like supernatural or have magical abilities. Our main character, Anna Delabra, is a genius detective, very Sherlock Holmes-esque, and her assistant, Din, is our point of view character. He is magically augmented so that he has a perfect memory, and those 2 things work great for a detective duo. And the mysteries are super fun, but the world building and how that ties into the mysteries is so cool. This really is the best of both worlds between dark fantasy and detective stuff. You should check this out. All right, at number 10, I have the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir. The first book is Gideon the Ninth. I've read the first 2. This is the third one. I haven't read this one yet. And there's supposed to be 4 in the series. The setup for Gideon the Ninth is that the Emperor rules the 9 planets of the solar system. Each planet is kind of its own house. And the Emperor invites the rulers of each house to the Imperial Palace to undergo a competition to become a lictor, which is like an immortal necromancer. So the Emperor is immortal and has been ruling for like 10,000 years. So now the rulers of each of the planetary houses have the opportunity to potentially become an immortal necromancer. And so they are invited along with their cavaliers, which are like their bodyguards who have more martial type weapons. They're all invited to come to the Imperial Palace / planet. And our point of view character is Gideon, who is the cavalier of Harrow, who is the ruler of one of the houses, the 9th house. And from there are twists and turns. I don't want to say too much more, but this series is super cool and creative. There is kind of some lightheartedness to the character of Gideon, but also a lot of dark magic and necromancy. Really cool series. I can't wait to read this book and also finish the series when the 4th book eventually comes out. In 9th place, I have a newer entry, the Dungeon Crawler Carl series by Matt Dinniman. I am currently reading The Butcher's Masquerade, which is book 5. There are 8 books out, and it's planned to be a 10-book series, so I am not quite at the halfway point. I have a little ways to go. And a couple books ago, I don't know that I would have included this on this list, but the more books that I read, the more depth we start to see out of Carl and the various characters in this series, the more themes we get to see Dinniman play with, particularly with the capitalistic greed of the galactic corporation that runs the reality TV show that is the dungeon crawl that Carl and other humans are being subjected to. And then that paired with Dinniman's crazy imagination. He's like the best dungeon master, running just an insane campaign with a bunch of goofy antics, crazy creatures, crazy battles, a lot of RPG mechanics, which make it feel kind of like you're reading either a video game or a tabletop role-playing game. That's either going to work for you or it's not. I didn't necessarily think this was going to be a subgenre, like the lit RPG subgenre. Wasn't sure if that was going to be for me, and maybe it's not in other examples, but this series is legitimately good, I think, and so it's working for me. It took a couple of books to get going, which I know people don't love to hear, and I get it. You don't always have time to read 1 or 2 books before you really get into it. The first 2 books weren't bad. Like, I had some fun, enough that I decided to keep going, but it really wasn't until books 3, 4, and now 5 where I'm finding myself really invested and enjoying the trajectory of the story, and I hear it just gets better from here on out. So for that reason, I'm really excited. Plus, there's a lot of hype around this series. It's hard not to be swept up in the excitement of the moment. Book 9 will be coming in the next, year or 2. There's a TV show that's in the works. It's hard not to get a little bit excited about that. So, Dungeon Crawler Carl, if you haven't checked it out, I feel like everybody's heard of this at this point, but it is on my top 10 ongoing list because it is pretty cool. In 8th place, I have The Burning series by Evan Winter. The first book being The Rage of Dragons, which I've read. The second book being The Fires of Vengeance. I have not read this one. And part of the reason I haven't read it is because it's been a while since, I think this book came out in... Yeah, this book came out in 2020, so it's been 6 years, and I don't think we quite have a date yet on when the final book in the trilogy is coming out, so I kind of want to just wait. At this point, it's been almost a decade since I read the first book, so when book 3 is announced, I plan to go back and reread that book and go into this one, but for a first book in a series, I found it just so fun and compelling. It's a revenge story, so it follows a character whose father is murdered and he is on a quest for revenge to rise up through the ranks. He's kind of lowly in the caste system of their society, and he's weak at the beginning of it, and he trains with the sword and becomes really powerful. There's really interesting magic systems. There's like dragons that the queens can control, and then there's like a sort of an underworld, spirit world thing that if you go there, these demon creatures will hunt you, and so you don't want to stay there for very long. Really cool. Again, it's been a while since I read it, so I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but I had such fun with it. The action and the sword fighting was so cool and well done that I'm just so excited for whenever book 3 is announced. And when it is, rest assured, I'm going to reread The Rage of Dragons and then read The Fires of Vengeance to get ready for book 3. And in 7th place, I have The Hierarchy series by James Islington. This was kicked off with The Will of the Many, which was one of my favorite books from a couple of years ago, and then last year we got the second volume, The Strength of the Few, which I also loved. I liked different things about book 2. I think book 1 did some really cool things with plot twists and world building, and then book 2 did different things with world building and plot twists in ways that I can't talk about without ruining major beats from not just this book, but the first book. So I'm just going to have to tell you to go read it. Basically, the setup for the first book is that we have a former prince whose nation was destroyed by the hierarchy, which is kind of like this empire, and now he is struggling to survive on his own in the land of his enemy that kind of destroyed his home. In this hierarchy, they use the idea of will, where people at the top of the hierarchy can absorb will from their subjects, and the higher up you are, the more will you draw and leech from all these people, which gives you far more power and mental acuity and all these different things. And our main character, Vis, gets the opportunity through certain plot devices to go to the academy where a lot of like the wealthy, rich, influential, powerful people's kids go to train to go off and lead the various sectors of politics and business and the military. And so it's kind of an infiltration story. Our main character is looking to get into this academy to rise up through the ranks, and he's sort of undercover. It's really cool. Cool world building, fun plot, not the strongest character work, but it's just a blast. It's a great series. And this second book does some really crazy things that I think is really cool, and I really respect what Islington is doing. And again, I can't say what it is because it would spoil things from this and from book one, but it is absolutely a series worth reading. This is one of those series where I am so hyped. When they announced book 3, it's on. I am so ready to sink my teeth into the next volume of this series. I'm just so excited. All right, what's crazy is that is a book series that I'm genuinely really hyped for, so everything from here on out, it's just getting better and better, which is crazy. But next up, in 6th place, we have the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. I have not read Lightbringer yet. I've read everything up through Dark Age. I know, everybody says Lightbringer's like the best one yet, and I'm excited for it. But this is another series where I think I'm going to reread the whole thing once we know the release date of Red God, which probably is next year. Like, we keep saying that, and you never really know, but I would guess Red God will come out sometime within the next 1 to 2 years. So once we know that date, I'm going to reread the series and finally get to Lightbringer, and of course, finish out the series with Red God. You've probably heard of Red Rising. This is another BookTube, Book Talk darling. It's pretty big at this point. Red Rising is another infiltration story, kind of like Will of the Many, but in this one it's more of a science fantasy or a space opera. And in this world, the Empire is divided up by colors, is like a caste system, with golds at the top and reds at the very bottom. Reds are basically just slaves. Darrow is a red, and something happens that allows him the opportunity to infiltrate an academy of the golds and kind of pretend to be a gold so that he can help take down the Empire from within. And then a lot happens from there. There's a lot I'm not talking about because I don't want to give anything away. You should just go read it. This is a series where the first book I thought was just okay. Some people really like it. I was a little bit middling on the original Red Rising novel. But book 2 really amps it up and turns it into the epic space opera that Pierce Brown always meant it to be. I believe the first book was written at a time when the Hunger Games was huge, and so they kind of wanted him to write it more in a Hunger Games style. So that first book feels a little bit like the Hunger Games on Mars, which is not inherently bad, but the series gets different and way more like space opera, epic science fantasy, starting with Golden Sun and from then on out. This series is brutal. It's so incredible. Check it out if you haven't already. All right, that was just the bottom 5 of my 10 favorite ongoing series, which is crazy because there were some heavy hitters in there. But now we're going to get into the upper half, and from here on out, it's hard to even rank them. But rank them, I must. That is my gift. That is my curse. In 5th place, I'm going to put The Gentleman Bastard series by Scott Lynch. I love this series. I think Lies of Locke Lamora is one of the best singular fantasy novels ever written. It just does so many things right. And Scott Lynch's command of the written word, not just like good prose, but also his dialogue, his ability to have characters insult each other is just best in class. Like, the way Scott Lynch thinks of insults, it's aspirational. It's truly incredible. Lies of Locke Lamora is about a thieving crew. Locke Lamora grows up on the streets as a thief, very much kind of Charles Dickens type story. Him and a bunch of other like orphans and misfits have a thieving crew, and as they grow up, they become better at their profession, and by the time they're young adults, they're starting to scam and swindle the nobility of the city they live in, and they get embroiled with more and more complicated and dangerous entities, from the nobility to like crime lords. And it goes from there. It's so good. The first book is my favorite, but I still really liked book 2 in the series, Red Seas Under Red Skies. I have not yet read Republic of Thieves. I've heard a little bit more mixed things of book 3. I still think I'm going to like it from what I've heard. But this is another one where it's been a long time. I think this book came out this one came out in 2013, so this is 13 years since we've had the last entry in this series. I know Scott Lynch has had like some stuff he's been dealing with that's made it hard for him to write, and in the past like 2 years or so, he said he's made improvements on allowing himself to write and finding ways to work through his process, which sounds promising. I think he's written some like novellas or short stories that are supposed to be coming out soonish. I don't know that we've had an update on the dates for those. And even though he said he's made good progress on book 4, The Thorn of Emberlane, we don't really have any idea when that's going to be. So I keep thinking that that's probably maybe 2 to 3 years away, but I feel like I've been thinking that for like 2 years now. So this is another one where it's hard to say if and when this is coming out. I do think it will come out. I don't know exactly when it will be. So I'm not in a rush to read this, but this is another one where as soon as Thorn of Emberlane is announced, I'm dropping everything. Like, this is truly one of my favorite fantasy series. It's also one of the series that really got me back into reading as a young adult. Like, I read a couple of things. Mistborn, I read this. I read one other book that's on this list we're going to get to. And Lies of Locke Lamora is one of those things that made me realize what fantasy can do, especially when you have someone as talented as Scott Lynch doing it. Oh, I love it so much. You must read these, or at least try them. Not everybody loves the structure of Lies of Locke Lamora, but man, I do. These are so good. You should try The Gentleman Bastards. In 4th place, can you guess what this book is? Not many books are this hefty and thick, and also not many books have this exact color palette. I think you might have guessed. This is The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Up-and-coming author. Little-known series. I think people are starting to figure this out. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, everybody knows about Brandon Sanderson and Stormlight. He's one of the most influential authors in probably fiction at this point, certainly in fantasy. Like, he's up there. With the exception of, like, George Martin and maybe a handful of others. Like, Sanderson is near the top of the pack in terms of influence, popularity. And I think it's become kind of popular to hate on Sanderson. He certainly has some weaknesses as an author, like any, and I think some of his weaknesses are easy to call out. But I also think he has some really good strengths. And I'm not just talking about like his world building, which I think he does some cool world building stuff. I think he's a good storyteller. I think he's good with character arcs. I think he's good with emotional beats. Even though like his dialogue and some of his character work is not the most nuanced, sometimes it is, but a lot of his character work can sometimes be not quite as nuanced, or some of his dialogue can be a little bit cringy or whatever. Not always. It's like, again, I feel like these criticisms make him sound less capable than he is, but some of these things I think are true. But despite all that, he's still a master storyteller. And I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't crazy excited anytime a new Sanderson project is released, but especially the Stormlight Archive. You could put Mistborn in here too. I just chose Stormlight Archive because this is my favorite of his series, but like when we get a new mainline Mistborn book, that'll be pretty hype for me too. But Stormlight in particular, this has become an event. And I think one of my favorite things growing up was things like The Wheel of Time, or back in the day, Harry Potter. Like the excitement that the culture had around something. Like, I just remember going to the bookstore and waiting in line for certain series that people would be talking about even outside of the fantasy community. It was so exciting to go and see the next big tome sitting on the shelf in the front of Barnes & Noble, or sometimes seeing these like in grocery stores or wherever else. That's not something I feel very often. And Stormlight is kind of one of those momentous events. Every time there's a new Stormlight Archive book, I get excited. This is one that I've been following since it started too. Like, I read The Way of Kings in 2012, I think, or 2013, right before Words of Radiance came out. And so I've basically been following this series since its inception, and it's been so exciting with each volume. Some of the mysteries Sanderson set up in The Way of Kings were so hype at the time. We're like, oh my god, where's he gonna take this? And there was obviously starting to be these Cosmere connections. I just couldn't believe it. It felt like the early MCU. I know now the MCU is kind of a joke, and we're all a little bit sick of it. But back in the day, when it was leading up to Infinity War, things were crazy. It kind of felt like that with some of the Stormlight stuff. And I will say, Book 5 of Stormlight had some things I didn't love about it. It had some really cool moments too, though. Like, don't get me wrong, there are a couple of scenes near, especially at the end of Book 5. Oh man, so hype. But there's also some things in Book 5 that did not work for me super well, that leaves me a little concerned about how I'm going to feel about the entirety of Stormlight. But despite that, there has been so many momentous things in Stormlight, with Kaladin's arc and his struggles with depression, and the way he overcomes that, and the way he relies on the people around him and builds the people around him, and Dalinar, and the way he is always searching to do the right thing, and the way he is trying to raise up everybody and to stick to his principles even when it's inconvenient, and the way he's trying to become a better man despite having the past that he has, the way Shallan is dealing with her inner demons and trying to become someone whole, The way Navani is trying to show her worth, even though it's been shot down so many times throughout her life, despite her being brilliant and amazing. There's so many good characters in this series that I can't wait to see what Sanderson does with it. And Sanderson tends to be pretty good at endings. He tends to have a plan in mind, and he's good at making things happen. The whole Sanderlanche snowball effect that the end of his novels have. They get even crazier at the end of his series. If you look at the end of Mistborn Era 1, the end of Mistborn Era 2, the end of the first half of the Stormlight series, there are so many great moments that I can't imagine how incredible the resolution of the back half of Stormlight is going to be, even if not everything works for me along the way. So there you have it. Stormlight, it is one of my most hyped series, and I can't wait. I know it's going to be a little bit of a wait. I feel like this series is going to end when I'm pretty old. I'll be in my 60s maybe, but I'll be there, you know? All right, we are down to my top 3 most favorite ongoing series. Can you guess what some of them are? You probably have a couple of guesses. 1 or 2 of those might be right. In third place, I'm going to go with The Kingkiller Chronicle. Now, I know, I always get a lot of hate. A lot of people, it's popular to hate on Rothfuss these days for a variety of reasons that are somewhat valid that I won't even fully get into. But I will say, I love these books. The Name of the Wind is one of the books that got me back into both fantasy and reading, and is another one of those books that made me realize I didn't realize the fantasy genre could do things that well. Reading something like Name of the Wind and seeing Rothfuss just have such good command over the English language was just great. And I know there's other authors that do just as well or even better, but at the time, I hadn't experienced it. And I think Rothfuss has such good poetic prose, and the way he tells stories is truly engaging. His plot sometimes meanders, and like there are aspects of his storytelling that doesn't work for me as much as I wish it would, but he is so good at storytelling moment to moment and so good at pulling you in with his words and painting a picture for you that I'm kind of okay with it. Like he is just an incredible storyteller in his own right. And the story of Kvothe and him going to the university and looking for truth about the Chandrian and what happened with his parents and his troop when he was a child. So many cool mysteries. I am a little worried. I don't know how well Rothfuss will be able to pay off all of the things he's set up, but I'm hopeful. But this is another one where this may never get finished. Another reason people get mad at me when I talk about this is because there's a good chance we won't see the final book in this series. I don't know how big that chance is. All I know is this came out this one came out all the way in 2011. So it has been 15 years since the second book, and we still don't have book 3. I'm not here to complain about that. Everybody complains about that. And I think there's some validity in complaining about that. But look, the day that book 3 is announced as having a date, I probably still won't quite believe it. But the day it actually releases and I'm in the store and I pick it up and I leaf through it to make sure the pages aren't blank, the day that happens is going to be the best day ever. I'm so excited. And you know, the hope that that will happen is part of what keeps me going. And if it never happens, that'll always be some hope that keeps me going. You got to have hope, you know? Even if not every dream in your life is fulfilled, the hope of those dreams is something that keeps you going. So there you go. These books are great. You should consider them. It's hard to fully recommend them knowing it might never be finished. For me, the experience of having read the first 2 books is enough that I'm like, it's additive to my life. If the third book never comes out, I'm not going to regret that I've read these. I will probably reread books 1 and 2 eventually and dream about what could have been. You know, sometimes we yearn for things we can't have, and that's kind of the feeling for this series. And I actually worry a little bit that book 3 will be a letdown, because how can you ever live up to something you've been yearning for so long? It's kind of like having a crush on someone for several years that you don't really know. And maybe it never goes anywhere and it's always this magical what could have been. Or if something works out, a lot of times it doesn't work out. Like if you actually start talking to the person, or maybe you date them for a minute. Sometimes the mystery is better. Not always. Sometimes the real thing is better. But we'll see what the case is for this. Either way, this is my number 3 pick for most beloved ongoing series. All right, my penultimate pick. This is probably going to anger some people too, because a lot of people would have this at number 1. My number 2 pick is A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. Obviously, Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire. You expected this on this list, and behold, it is here. Obviously, this is another one. I think this also came out in 2011, I want to say. This is another 15-year gap, and obviously there are a lot of jokes on the internet. Everybody talks about it, like, oh my god, is George R. R. Martin ever going to finish this? He gets asked at conventions, what's going to happen if he dies before it's finished, and that probably sucks. The amount of pressure that man feels over the series, like him and Rothfuss both, but especially I think George R. R. Martin, that's gotta suck. I don't know if I could handle that, and I could see that ruining the artistic experience of creating this thing. Like when he started writing this series in the 90s, like no one really knew about it. So I don't know. I kind of get it. And this is one that's maybe even more likely that we'll never see the end, because not only do we not have book 6, this is supposed to be 7 books. So Winds of Winter, even if we get that, what are the odds we also get A Dream of Spring? I don't know. And George R. R. Martin, he is older. So not trying to say anything. I'm not trying to add pressure. This is also another series where if it's never finished, I'm still glad I've read it, and I still probably will reread it at some point, because it is a masterpiece for what it is. Some of the best fantasy ever written. I think this is on the level of like Tolkien's stuff in a different way. He does different things than Tolkien. He has different strengths and different weaknesses. But I think he is similarly, it's hard to say without some more time and distance, maybe not quite to Tolkien's level, but I think as close as you could get. I think he's kind of this generation's equivalent of Tolkien in terms of the influence he has, not just on the fantasy genre, but on popular media and culture. It's pretty hard to argue with that, in my opinion, and for good reason. These books are incredible. This is kind of like Lord of the Rings too, in the sense that his world feels so believably real and deep and rich, but in a more brutal, sad way than Tolkien, I think. But anyway, Song of Ice and Fire, obviously this was going to be on here, and it is my number 2 spot. And so that leaves us with my number 1 favorite ongoing series. This is the series that I am legitimately the most excited for a couple of reasons. One is this series, I believe, will be finished in a somewhat reasonable timeline. This is a series where we have gotten a book recently, and I think we will get another book somewhat soon, and it's just a series that emotionally, it hits everything for me. It hits everything in terms of cool factor, fantasy factor, incredible character work and growth over the arc of this series. And it's just, this series, I've reread it like 5 or 6 times at this point, and I'm going to reread it multiple times more. I am talking about The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. This series is legitimately that good, but this is a series where it's the long haul. Like the first couple of books I thought were fun and I enjoyed them, but they were nothing crazy good. Like they were just kind of a fun time. This series really requires the investment, because you will, as you keep reading these books, is assuming you're having fun with them, but if you're having fun with them, you'll suddenly find yourself being hit with emotions unexpectedly. Not just because of the main character, Harry Dresden, who has his flaws, but if you fall in love with him, if you keep reading the series, I think you probably will come to love him. But also there are so many incredible supporting characters in this series that I kind of love even more than Dresden. And it kind of works because you're in Dresden's head, and so you come to love his friends and family in a way that feels so real that like his friends and family are my friends and family. And he's also my friends and family. We're all a big friends and family. Anyway, it's so good. The emotional beats in this series. And as you get to book 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I know it sounds crazy me counting that high, but like you are going to be hit with such incredible story beats, such incredible emotional moments, climactic moments. As you get to book like 15, 16, 17, I can't remember if this is 17 or 18. Oh, it's so good. And so I think there's going to be 3 or so more mainline Dresden novels, and then there's going to be a final trilogy. So that's like probably 5 to 6 more books, maybe 7 more books, but the final trilogy, it sounds like it's going to be one big story broken into 3 parts, which is pretty epic, and I think for what Jim Butcher is setting up, it makes sense. This is another story where it starts off smaller scale. You're following a wizard detective in Chicago. It's kind of mystery of the week, monster of the week. And as you keep reading, it expands. The world building expands. The stakes raise. The world gets wider. And before you know it, this goes from urban fantasy to some of the most epic fantasy that I've ever read. This is epic like Stormlight. I mean, it's different than Stormlight, but it's like similarly epic. I get chills from this just as much, if not more, than I get from Stormlight, which is saying a lot because Stormlight gives me a lot of chills too. So anyway, The Dresden Files, favorite ongoing series. This is one where I really want to know how it wraps up, but the minute I finish the final Dresden book, the book hangover that's going to hit me is going to be so bad. I am going to be catatonic. I probably won't talk to anybody for like 6 months, a year. I might have to like go to another country and like study with monks and like not speak for a while and like come back knowing some ancient martial arts and wisdom. I think that's what I'm going to have to do after I finish the series, because I won't know what to do with myself. Anyway, those are my 10 plus 1 honorable mentions, so 11 favorite ongoing series right now in fantasy. Again, I haven't read everything, so there are series that I haven't really started yet that might make this list, and so maybe I'll do an updated version eventually. And it's worth calling out, there are series I've finished that I love that would be on a top 10 list, but that's not what this is. This is ongoing series that I haven't finished, so we'll leave it at that. Maybe eventually on this channel, I'll do a new top 10. I don't think I've ever done a top 10 on this channel of like my legit favorite of all time, but there'll probably be some overlap. The way I spoke about Dresden, you can probably guess that's going to be in there along with some others. So let me know in the comments, have you read any of these, and like what do you think about them in conversation with favorite ongoing series? Or do you have any favorite ongoing series right now that you think I should read? I would love to hear what you would pick for a list like this. Let me know. And thanks for watching and tuning in. As always, I appreciate all of you. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate you watching these videos and chatting with me. It's super fun. And that is it. Someday, I'm going to hire an outro writer, a ghostwriter, to write a killer outro. And I'm going to say it. I'm going to be like, wow, what an outro. And then you're going to realize, I don't really think I've written something that good. Bye.